Crystal Ball College Football. I'm your host, Grayson Grunhafer, and today we're talking about the Tennessee Volunteers, a team that I was really excited about coming into the year. I just felt like this was maybe a team who could sneak up and surprise some people in the SEC East, and they went on the road. They beat Pitt, a hostile road environment against a top 17 Pitt team. Now, is Pitt really that good? I don't know, but the reason I was so intrigued about this matchup was really for a couple reasons, but the main one was Pitt's defensive line versus Tennessee's offensive line. Pitt, according to pretty much everyone, they have one of the top defensive lines in the country, and if you watch them play through the first 2 weeks, you can definitely see why people think that. They get after the quarterback well, they stop the run well, and for Tennessee, a big part of this Tennessee program coming into the year were not allowing sacks on Hendon Hooker, and then also getting sacks on the defensive side. So we'll get to the defense here in a second. But I thought offensively, I was really impressed that they were able to keep the Pitt defense off of Hendon Hooker for the most part. It wasn't perfect. There were still QB hurries. They gave up a few sacks, but it wasn't overwhelming by any means. And even though Tennessee didn't find a way to run for a very efficient margin, they were 91 yards on 35 carries. It wasn't great, but I did feel like at times when they had to, they found ways to either score touchdowns in the red zone with the run or get a first down with their run game. So for the most part, I was impressed. They gave Hooker enough time to stand in the pocket, make some throws. He had 325 yards, 2 touchdowns. The bigger thing was the explosive plays, right? The 61-yard touchdown to Cedric Tillman. He had another long touchdown in overtime. Brew McCoy had a 32-yard touchdown. So because they gave him time, he was able to hit on some explosive plays. Now, let me clarify. This game was not pretty by the Tennessee offense. It was not a historic showing or anything like that. But when you go on the road in a hostile environment and you're facing a defensive line that can get after your quarterback and completely wreck your game plan, Tennessee was able to stand tall and find a way offensively to generate enough points to win a big road test. So that was the first part. That was the offense. Now the defense. The defense stole the show in this game. They played exceptionally well. And I think back when we talked about Tennessee in the season preview earlier this year, I talked about the fact that Tennessee was top 7 in tackles for loss, but they were I think they were outside the top 100 in sacks a year ago. And those two things don't make much sense. And you know that there has to be some sort of regression to the mean. And so it's a matter of, what do you believe in? Do you believe that the tackles for loss were fluky, or do you believe that the lack of getting sacks was fluky? And for me, I felt like it was the sacks, because when you're as disruptive as they were in the run game and as disruptive as they were in the passing game, creating all those tackles for loss, you have to imagine that they have some guys who can get after the quarterback. And that showed on Saturday. Tennessee had 4 sacks. You might sit there and say, that's not a big deal. Who cares? 4 sacks, that's not game-changing. They had 16 quarterback hurries. How many times have you looked at a box score, watched a football game, and then you go look at the box score and you scroll down and you're looking, you see, 4 sacks, and you look in that far right column and you see 16 hurries? I mean, these quarterbacks, Nick Potty and Keaton Slovis, were running for their life. Keaton Slovis, of course, got knocked out in this game. It was just this game-changing pass rush. Aaron Beasley, great pass rusher. Byron Young, very explosive off the edge. So I was just impressed. They have guys who I think can get after the quarterback pretty well, and it finally all came together in this game. So I was really impressed by that. They also, in the run game, another area where Tennessee at times struggled a year ago, and you look at the numbers and you see, okay, Pitt ran for 141 yards on 39 carries. That's 3.6 yards per carry. And you say, that's pretty good, right? Well, Pitt also had a 76-yard run in there. So if you get rid of that one run, which I know you can't take it back, but I think if you look at the consistency and how they were generally throughout the game, they gave up 65 yards, 1.7 yards per carry on 38 carries. That is stout. That is really good run defense, and that shows me that this Tennessee team is ready to compete. They're ready to fight in the trenches. They're ready to get after the quarterback, and they're ready to actually win some games with their defense. And they did that on Saturday. I was very impressed by that, and I think it bodes really well for the future of this team going on throughout the year. Because I think if you sit back and look at it, you go, okay, this team, we know they're explosive offensively, but can they get enough stops? Can they get off the field? Can they make enough plays defensively, get sacks, create turnovers to be relevant in the SEC? And I think the answer is absolutely yes. Now, looking on the offensive side, Hendon Hooker, great quarterback. We talked about him earlier. He's going to win them games. I think their weapons are emerging. When you look at Cedric Tillman, we know he's one of the best wide receivers in the country. Jalen Hyatt is starting to become more consistent. He actually had 11 catches in this game. Only 73 yards. He wasn't hitting on the explosives, but very reliable. And then you also got to see the glimpse of Brew McCoy. You saw him in week 1, but in this game, 4 for 58, had a 32-yard touchdown. He looks really good, and his emergence can take this offense to a whole nother level. So once again, very impressed. I'm convinced that this team offensively is going to win some games with their offense. Now it just comes down to how many games is their defense going to lose. And after watching the game Saturday, I think there's a chance that their defense could win them quite a few games, or at least keep them in it. Now I'm ready to make a little bold prediction on Tennessee here. So I think they're going to be 5-0 going into the Alabama game. And that's in a couple weeks. They have Akron, Florida, at LSU coming up, and then the game against Alabama. I think they're going to be undefeated going into that one. And I think they're going to take on an undefeated Alabama team. And that is going to be one heck of a matchup. But who knows if they win that game? It's going to be at Tennessee. I think they can win that game. I think they have a chance. But then you look at the rest of their schedule. UT Martin at home. That's a win. Kentucky at home. Kentucky's good, but I think Tennessee can definitely win that game. At Georgia, probably a loss. Missouri, at South Carolina, at Vanderbilt. That's a very doable schedule. And me sitting here kind of looking at the schedule, looking at where Tennessee is at, I think this is going to be a 10-2 team to end the year. I think they are very, very good. I think I look at the schedule and I go, okay, so what if they lose to Alabama? So what if they lose at Georgia? I think they can win the rest. And this is a very good team. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And this was a game that when I watched it, I came away feeling way better about Tennessee, even more so than I did earlier in the year when I picked them to go over their 7.5 mark. I think this team is going to be very, very solid throughout the year. They're going to have a chance in that Alabama game. They might even have a chance against Georgia if their offense really peaks at the right time during that matchup. And I think overall their offense is going to win them some football games, and they're going to be extremely explosive on that side of the ball. So very impressed with the Tennessee Volunteers. A lot of season left. Injuries could derail things, but with the way things are trending, this is a very, very good football team that is going to be dangerous for any team in the country to face. So that's it for Tennessee. We're going to talk more about a few other teams who really impressed me throughout the week, throughout the weekend, and then, of course, my bets later on in the week. But thanks for joining Crystal Ball College Football.